The supervisor's voice was a wall of condescending calm. "Ma'am, I've made the final decision. Either the bag gets checked or you don't fly today. It's that simple." Dr. Lena Holloway looked from the man's smug face to her sleek graphite-colored carry-on, the product of her life's work. The bag wasn't just a piece of luggage, it was a statement, a testament to innovation. And it was now at the center of a humiliating public spectacle. What the supervisor, the gate agent, and the entire airline didn't know was that the very logo emblazoned on their uniforms, their boarding passes, and the fuselage of the plane outside was there because of a multi-million-dollar deal she had personally signed. They weren't just refusing her bag, they were insulting the very brand that was keeping their airline afloat. The hum of the international terminal at JFK was a familiar symphony to Dr. Lena Holloway. It was a chaotic orchestra of rolling wheels, anxious announcements, and a dozen languages overlapping in a seamless murmur. For Lena, it was the sound of progress. As the founder and CEO of Aura Luggage Airports were her second home, her real-world laboratories. At 38, she had single-handedly revolutionized the travel industry. A PhD in material science from MIT, she hadn't just started a company. She had invented the proprietary polymer composite that made Aura bags virtually indestructible, yet lighter than anything on the market. Her own carry-on, the Aura Odyssey model, was her pride and joy. It was a masterpiece of design and engineering, with a graphite shell that shimmered subtly under the terminal lights, whisper-quiet magnetic wheels, and a patented compression system that allowed for maximum capacity within regulation dimensions. It was to the millimeter compliant with the carry-on sizer for every major airline in the world, a fact she knew intimately, as she had overseen the design specifications herself. Today's flight, Meridian Airways, Flight 101 to London Heathrow, was particularly significant. She was heading to London to finalize the marketing rollout of a landmark $50 million sponsorship deal. Aura Luggage was now the official exclusive luggage partner of Meridian Airways. The deal was a massive coup, set to elevate her billion-dollar company into a global household name. Her presentation, stored on a secure drive inside the Odyssey, contained the final projections and creative assets that would be unveiled to Meridian's European executive team. Beside the drive were 3 custom-molded prototypes for a new smart locking mechanism she planned to surprise them with. Checking the bag was therefore not an option. As she approached Gate B24, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The new Meridian branding was already being displayed. A massive digital banner behind the check-in desk showed a smiling pilot standing next to a gleaming set of Aura luggage. The tagline read, "Meridian Airways and Aura Journey Smarter Together." Lena, dressed in a tailored navy blue blazer and comfortable but chic trousers, blended in with the other business-class travelers. She was not one for ostentatious displays of wealth. Her quiet confidence and sharp, intelligent eyes were her primary calling cards. She believed her product and her work spoke for itself. The boarding process began, starting with passengers requiring special assistance, followed by first and business class. As Lena's group was called, she walked toward the gate, pulling her Odyssey smoothly behind her. The gate agent, a woman with a severe haircut and a name tag that read Brenda, was watching each passenger like a hawk, her eyes darting immediately to their carry-on luggage. "Good morning," Lena said, offering a warm smile as she handed over her passport and boarding pass. Brenda didn't return the smile. Her gaze was fixed on the Aura bag. "That looks a bit bulky," she said, her tone flat and accusatory. "You'll need to place it in the sizer." Lena's smile didn't falter, though she felt a flicker of annoyance. It was a power play she'd seen 1,000 times. Of course, she replied politely. "It's a standard dimension carry-on. It'll fit perfectly." She confidently rolled the Odyssey over to the dreaded metal cage and slid it in. It fit like a glove, dropping into the space with a satisfying, soft click. There was even a centimeter of clearance on the top and sides. She looked back at Brenda, expecting a nod to proceed. Instead, Brenda squinted, walked over, and pushed down on the bag. It didn't move. She wiggled it. It remained perfectly seated within the sizer's confines. "It's too tight," Brenda declared, her voice loud enough for the passengers behind Lena to hear. Lena's eyebrows rose. "I'm sorry, it's not tight at all. It dropped right in. See," she gestured to the visible gap around the bag. "Ma'am Brenda," said her voice, dripping with artificial patience. "I can see that it's wedged in there. It's supposed to slide in and out effortlessly. That's the rule. We have to be strict about this for the safety of all our passengers. The bag will have to be checked." The line behind Lena was growing, and a few people began to grumble. A sense of disbelief washed over her. This was absurd. This was her bag, her design. She knew its dimensions better than she knew her own height. "With all due respect," Lena said, keeping her voice low, "and even it's not wedged. It's a perfect fit, and I must take it on board. It contains sensitive business materials and prototypes." Brenda crossed her arms, her expression hardening into a mask of bureaucratic indifference. "Everyone says their luggage is important, Mum. That's not my problem. The bag doesn't comply. You can either step aside and we can tag it for checking, or you can forfeit your seat on this flight." The ultimatum hung in the air, a stark and sudden escalation. The other passengers were now openly staring, their expressions a mixture of pity and impatience. Lena felt the first flush of heat rise in her cheeks. This wasn't about the bag anymore. It was about something else entirely. The public nature of the standoff was galling. Lena was a private person, a leader who commanded respect in boardrooms through intellect and quiet authority, not by making scenes in public. She took a slow, calming breath, determined to handle this with logic and reason. There must be a misunderstanding. She began again, her tone professional and steady. "This bag is the Odyssey model from Aura Luggage. Perhaps you've seen the new branding." She gestured subtly toward the massive digital banner right behind Brenda's head, the one featuring her own product line. "My company is the new official luggage sponsor for Meridian Airways. This bag was literally designed in collaboration with your airline's own specifications team to ensure a perfect fit." She had expected this piece of information to be a trump card, a simple key to unlock this nonsensical situation. She imagined Brenda's eyes widening in recognition, followed by a flustered apology. She received the opposite. Brenda glanced dismissively at the banner, then back at Lena, a smirk playing on her lips. "Lots of companies make cheap knockoffs that look like the real thing, Mum. Just because it looks like an Ahura bag doesn't mean it is one. And even if it were, rules are rules. I'm the agent in charge of this gate, and my decision is that the bag is too large." The accusation of carrying a cheap knockoff of her own product was so profoundly insulting, so deeply ironic, that for a moment Lena was speechless. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. This woman wasn't just enforcing a rule, she was enjoying the power, wielding her minor authority like a cudgel. The subtle but unmistakable undertones of the interaction were not lost on Lena either. The dismissive tone, the refusal to listen, the immediate assumption of dishonesty, it was a familiar, ugly pattern she had faced countless times in her life and career, just never so blatantly in a context where her own success was literally the wallpaper. "I can assure you this is not a knockoff," Lena said, her voice now edged with a cold firmness that she rarely used. "And I can also assure you that it complies. I would like to speak with your supervisor, please." Brenda let out an exasperated sigh, as if Lena were a toddler throwing a tantrum. Fine, but he's going to tell you the exact same thing. She picked up her desk phone and spoke into it in a low conspiratorial tone. Gary, I've got a situation at B24. A passenger with an oversized carry-on refusing to comply. Business class? Yes. Okay. She hung up and gave Lena a triumphant look. My supervisor, Gary Price, is on his way. You'll need to step out of the line so we can continue boarding. Humiliated, Lena pulled her perfectly sized bag from the sizer. It slid out, with a single fluid motion, utterly belying Brenda's claim that it was wedged and stood to the side. The other passengers shuffled past, some shaking their heads in sympathy, others shooting her annoyed glances for causing a delay. Each passing moment felt like an eternity. She could feel her composure, her carefully constructed shield of professionalism, beginning to crack. Her mind raced not just with anger, but with the logistical nightmare this was creating. Her presentation, her prototypes, everything she needed for the career-defining meeting in London was in that bag. A few minutes later, a man in a slightly too tight suit jacket bustled toward the gate. Gary Price was a man who looked permanently stressed with a receding hairline and a harried expression that he probably thought projected importance. He didn't make eye contact with Lena. Instead, he went straight to Brenda. What's the problem here? He asked, loud enough for everyone to hear. Brenda launched into a one-sided dramatic retelling. This passenger's bag is too big for the sizer. I told her it needs to be checked, but she's refusing to cooperate. Started going on about some sponsorship and claiming it's a special bag. It was clearly wedged in there, Gary, a total safety hazard. Gary nodded along, not once looking at the bag or the sizer. He had already made his judgment based entirely on his employee's report. He finally turned to Lena, his face a mask of practiced authority. "Mum," he began, his voice, the epitome of condescending corporate speak. "I understand you're frustrated, but our gate agents are highly trained to ensure compliance with federal and company safety regulations. Brenda's assessment stands. The bag is oversized." "It is not oversized," Lena stated, her patience worn thin. "I just demonstrated that it fits. Your agent is mistaken. Furthermore, I am the CEO of Aura Luggage, the company currently sponsoring your airline. This bag is the flagship product of that partnership. I am on my way to a meeting with your own executive team. Checking this bag is not an option." She delivered the information flatly, factually. It wasn't a boast. It was a last-ditch effort to inject sanity into the situation. Gary Price, however, seemed to interpret it as a threat from a delusional, entitled passenger. He actually chuckled a short, sharp, disbelieving sound. "The CEO, right. Ma'am, you wouldn't believe the things people say to try and get out of a baggage fee. It's a nice story, but it doesn't change the physical reality. Now we're on a tight schedule. I've made the final decision. Either the bag gets checked, or you don't fly today. It's that simple." The finality in his voice was like a slamming door. He had not listened. He had not investigated. He had sided with his employee without a moment's hesitation, dismissing Lena and her credentials out of hand. In his eyes, she was not a CEO, not a partner, not even a valued customer. She was just a problem to be managed. Defeated by the sheer unyielding wall of their ignorance, Lena felt a cold resolve settle over her. There would be no winning this battle here, in the noise and chaos of the boarding gate. The war, however, was just beginning. "Fine," she said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Tag it." Brenda's face broke into a wide, victorious smile as she grabbed a gate check tag. As she roughly looped it around the custom leather handle of the Odyssey, Lena noticed a young woman a few feet away, a student by the looks of her holding her phone up. The small red light was on. She had been recording the entire exchange. Watching Brenda slap the sticky gate check tag onto her bag felt like a physical violation. The Odyssey wasn't just an object. It was the culmination of years of sleepless nights, failed experiments, and relentless determination. It was a tangible piece of her soul, and this woman was handling it with the same care one might give a bag of trash. The final insult came when Brenda, with a flourish of petty power, ripped the tag's receipt and handed it to Lena. "You can pick it up at baggage claim in London, if it gets there." The implied threat was unmistakable. Lena took the flimsy paper without a word, her expression unreadable. She walked down the jet bridge, her footsteps echoing in the narrow corridor. The flight attendants greeted her with bright, oblivious smiles as she boarded the aircraft. She found her seat in the quiet, spacious business-class cabin, sank into the plush leather, and closed her eyes. The anger was there, a white-hot coil in her stomach. But it was being rapidly overtaken by something else, a chilling, crystalline focus. The humiliation she felt was not just personal. It was a corporate affront. Meridian Airways, through its employees, had not only insulted her personally, but had also demonstrated a profound contempt for their partnership and her brand. Gary Price's derisive chuckle at her claim of being the CEO echoed in her mind. They hadn't believed her. The possibility that a black woman in a simple blazer could be the head of a billion-dollar corporation was to them so outlandish it was laughable. She pulled out her phone, noting the time and the names on the employee tags, Brenda Jenkins and Gary Price. She began to type a detailed, dispassionate account of the entire incident into her notes app, capturing every piece of dialogue, every action, every nuance of their condescending tones. She was no longer just an aggrieved passenger. She was a CEO gathering evidence. The plane took off, pressing her back into her seat as it climbed over the New York City skyline. Below her, the world was a sprawling grid of lights and possibilities. Up here, in the pressurized bubble of the cabin, she was trapped with her thoughts. The meeting in London was in 9 hours. Her presentation, the vital data, the physical prototypes, all were now in the unsecure, chaotic environment of the cargo hold, at the mercy of the very people who had just demonstrated their utter incompetence and disdain. She paid for the premium in-flight Wi-Fi, the connection painfully slow but functional. The first email she sent was to her second-in-command and head of communications, Nathan Reed. The subject line was stark, urgent Meridian incident. The body of the email was brief and precise. Nathan I was forced to gate-check the Odyssey on MA101 to LHR. The bag contains the London presentation and the new prototypes. This action was taken by gate agent Brenda Jenkins and supervisor Gary Price at JFK Gate B24, who refused to accept that the bag met carry-on dimensions despite physical proof. They were unprofessional, condescending, and accused me of carrying a counterfeit product. When I identified myself as the CEO of Aura, their partner, I was laughed at and dismissed. The entire exchange was degrading and a direct insult to our brand and our new partnership. This is now a code red situation. I need our legal team looped in immediately. I need you to find out who Robert Morrison's direct chief of staff is and get a name. Do not engage with Meridian's PR department yet. We will control the narrative on this. I have a strong feeling this was filmed by another passenger. Get our social media team to start scanning for it. Hashtags to watch for might include Meridian Airways, call JFK. Bad service. You know the drill. I will handle the meeting in London. Prepare a backup of the presentation from the cloud and have it messengered to my hotel, the Savoy, on a new encrypted drive. Let's hope the prototypes survive the journey. This partnership is now on life support. Their actions today will determine if we pull the plug. Lena. After sending the email, a sense of grim determination settled over her. She would not let this derail her. She would walk into that meeting in London, with or without her presentation materials, and command the room. But the long-term consequences of this event were now her primary focus. This was no longer just about a misinformed gate agent. It was about systemic rot. It was about a corporate culture that allowed such prejudice and incompetence to fester. She leaned her head against the cool window, watching the Atlantic Ocean pass by thousands of feet below. A vow formed in her mind, as solid and unyielding as the polymer composite of her luggage. She would not just seek an apology. An apology was easy cheap. She would seek accountability. She would demand change. She would make Meridian Airways understand in no uncertain terms the monumental cost of underestimating Dr. Lena Holloway. The $50 million sponsorship deal was now the least of their worries. The price of their disrespect was about to become incalculably higher. Back in Aura's sleek Manhattan headquarters, Nathan Reed's phone buzzed with the notification of Lena's email. The subject line, alone. Urgent Meridian incident made the hairs on his arm stand up. Lena Holloway was the calmest, most unflappable leader he had ever worked for. For her to use that kind of language meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. He read the email twice, his shock turning into a slow, burning rage. He had been in the room for every grueling negotiation with Meridian. He knew how much this partnership meant, not just financially, but for the brand's global prestige. The idea of gate agents from their new partner airline accusing Lena of carrying a fake and laughing in her face was beyond belief. Code Red, he muttered to himself, the internal designation for a crisis that threatened the core of the company. He immediately forwarded the email to Aura's chief legal counsel, a formidable woman named Alani Hassan, with a one-line addendum. Alani read this now. We need to talk in 5. Next, he sprinted to the social media monitoring hub, a room known as The Nest, where a team of young, sharp analysts watched global trends and brand mentions on a wall of massive screens. I need a full sweep, Nathan announced, his voice tight with urgency. JFK Meridian Airways, Gate B24, anything from the last hour. Keywords: passenger, carry-on, argument, supervisor. I want every platform scraped. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Go. The team jumped into action, their fingers flying across keyboards. Within 90 seconds, one of the analysts, a bright young man named Ben, shouted, "Got something." Twitter. A user named Jess Carter, 22, posted a video 2 minutes ago. Nathan rushed over to his screen. Ben hit play. The video was shaky, clearly filmed on a phone, but the audio was crystal clear. It started with Lena's calm, logical explanation of her bag fitting in the sizer. It captured Brenda's sneering dismissal, Lena's request for a supervisor, and then the arrival of Gary Price. The most damning part was the exchange where Lena identified herself. The video perfectly captured Gary's condescending chuckle. The CIO right. The camera then zoomed in slightly on the massive Meridian and Aura promotional banner hanging behind the desk, a piece of brutal, unintentional irony. The video ended with Lena's quiet, defeated fine, and the sight of Brenda triumphantly tagging the bag. The caption Jessica Carter had posted was simple and devastating. Disgusting treatment of a passenger by Meridian Airways staff at JFK. They forced her to check her perfectly. Legal carry-on laughed at her and accused her of faking who she was. Do better. Meridian meltdown, or flying while black. Customer service, fail. Nathan's blood ran cold. It was worse than he imagined. The optics were a complete and utter nightmare. The video wasn't just about a bag. It was a textbook example of corporate arrogance and implicit bias, all caught in high definition. "How many views?" Nathan asked, his voice low. When I found it about 500, Ben replied, his eyes wide. It's at 20,000 now, and climbing fast. A major travel blogger just retweeted it. The digital tsunami had begun." Nathan pulled out his phone and dialed Alani. "Alani, it's on video. It's already going viral. We have a full-blown Category 5 crisis on our hands." He then began issuing a rapid-fire series of commands to his team. "Ben, download that video before it gets taken down. Archive it on our secure servers. I want every comment, every share, every retweet logged. I want sentiment analysis running in real time. Team, no one from this company, and I mean no one, engages online. No comments, no replies. Complete radio silence." We wait for Lena's signal. Our official position for now is that we are unaware of the situation. Let Meridian walk right into this minefield alone. Meanwhile, at Meridian Airways corporate headquarters in Chicago, the day was starting like any other Tuesday. Mid-level managers were sipping coffee and complaining about their commutes. In their own social media department, the first alerts about the viral video began to ping. A junior analyst flagged it, labeling it moderate customer complaint, and escalated it to his manager. The manager watched the video and sighed. Another passenger dispute. He followed the standard protocol, drafting a bland, non-committal response to post on Twitter. Meridian Airways is aware of a video showing a disagreement at JFK. We take all customer service issues seriously and are currently investigating the incident. We are committed to providing a safe and comfortable journey for all our passengers. He hit post and went to get another coffee, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just thrown a thimble of water on a raging grease fire. He had no idea who the woman in the video was. To him, she was just another faceless complaint in a long line of them. He didn't know that the CEO of their brand new multi-million-dollar partner was at that moment flying across the Atlantic, methodically planning the deconstruction of his company's reputation. The digital tsunami was about to make landfall, and Meridian Airways had just posted a welcome sign on the beach. Robert Morrison, the CEO of Meridian Airways, was a man who lived by the numbers. He cared about on-time departure rates, profit margins, and stock prices. The messy human element of air travel was a necessary nuisance, a variable to be managed by his subordinates. His morning had been spent in a finance meeting dissecting fuel cost projections. He was feeling pleased with himself when his chief of staff, a perpetually anxious man named David Chen, knocked and entered the office without waiting for a reply. "Bob, we have a situation," David said, his face pale. He held a tablet in his hand. "A video from JFK this morning is going viral. It's bad." Robert waved a dismissive hand. "David, there's a new viral video every week. A lost bag, a delayed flight. It's the cost of doing business. Let PR handle it." "They did," David said, swallowing hard. "They posted the standard non-apology. It's made things 1,000 times worse. The hashtag #UCharMeridianMeltdown is the #1 trend in the US. The video has over 5 million views now. Robert's interest was piqued. 5 million was a number he could understand. What's the substance? What are they so upset about?" David placed the tablet on the massive oak desk and played the video. Robert Morrison watched his expression shifting from boredom to annoyance, then to a flicker of concern. He saw his employees, Brenda and Gary, being dismissive and arrogant. He saw the passenger, a composed African-American woman, being publicly humiliated. He saw Gary Price laugh in her face. "Incompetent fools," Robert muttered. "They created a scene over a single bag. Fire them. Issue a real apology to the passenger, offer her a few 100,000 miles, and make this go away. Who even is she?" This was the question David had been dreading. He took a deep breath. "That's the problem, Bob. We've identified the passenger. Her name is Dr. Lena Holloway. The name meant nothing to Robert. He stared blankly at David, and David's voice was barely a whisper. Dr. Lena Holloway, founder and CEO of Aura Luggage. The silence in the room was absolute. The 3 words, CEO of Aura, sucked all the air out of the vast, opulent office. Robert Morrison's mind, which usually moved at a glacial pace for anything not on a spreadsheet, suddenly worked with lightning speed. He connected the dots in a horrifying, cascading chain reaction. The woman in the video, Aura Luggage, their new exclusive partner, the $50 million sponsorship deal, the joint marketing campaign, the meeting she was flying to in London with his executive team. He felt a wave of nausea. He looked from the tablet where the image of his supervisor laughing was frozen on the screen to the terrified face of his chief of staff. "Get them on the phone," Robert croaked, his voice hoarse. Who? David asked, confused. "Everyone," Robert roared, surging to his feet. "Get the head of PR, legal and North American operations in my office right now. Get me the manifest for Flight 101. Find out where Dr. Holloway is. Get me her personal cell number." Now, as David scrambled out of the office, Robert stared at the video again. He wasn't just looking at a PR disaster anymore. He was looking at a potential $50 million crater in his company's balance sheet. And that was just the beginning. The stock price, the brand reputation, the future partnerships, it was all at risk. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his head of investor relations. "Bob, are you seeing Twitter? The stock is already down 4% in pre-market trading. What the hell is going on?" Panic, cold and absolute, began to set in. He tried to think. What was the protocol here? He had to get ahead of it. He had to call her, apologize profusely, explain that it was a terrible mistake made by a couple of rogue employees. He would tell her they had already been fired. He would offer her anything she wanted. He barked at his assistant through the intercom. "Get me a direct line to Dr. Lena Holloway. Tell her it's Robert Morrison, CEO of Meridian Airways, and it's a matter of extreme urgency." Minutes later, his assistant's voice came back, trembling slightly. "Sir, I have her executive assistant on the line. He says Dr. Holloway is currently in the air unreachable, and that all future communications regarding Meridian Airways are to be routed through her legal counsel's office." The message was clear. She wasn't taking his call. She had already lawyered up. This wasn't going to be solved with a simple apology and some frequent flyer miles. Dr. Holloway wasn't playing their game. She was inventing a new one, and he had a sickening feeling that he was about to lose. The hunter had become the hunted. The woman they had dismissed as a nobody was now holding the fate of his airline in her hands. Flight 101 touched down at London Heathrow under a typically grey and drizzling sky. Lena felt none of the usual fatigue from a transatlantic flight. Adrenaline and righteous fury had been a potent combination, keeping her mind sharp and focused for the entire 7-hour journey. She powered on her phone as the plane taxied to the gate, and the ensuing flood of notifications was overwhelming. There were dozens of texts from Nathan and her executive team, links to news articles from Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, and CNN, all covering the Meridian meltdown. The video had surpassed 10 million views. Aura was trending for all the right reasons, with social media users praising the elegance of the bag and the calm dignity of the unknown CEO lady. Meridian Airways was being systematically dismantled online. A grim smile touched Lena's lips. Phase 1 was complete, and she hadn't had to lift a finger. She disembarked and proceeded directly to baggage claim, knowing what she would likely find. Or rather, what she wouldn't. She stood by the carousel for a full 45 minutes, watching every other bag from her flight tumble out onto the belt. Her odyssey was nowhere to be seen. The final predictable failure in a chain of failures. They hadn't just insulted her. They had lost the very bag at the center of the dispute the bag containing her valuable prototypes. She walked to the Meridian Airways baggage services office, where a frazzled-looking agent was dealing with a long line of annoyed passengers. When it was her turn, she calmly presented her gate check tag. The agent typed the number into his system. He frowned. That's odd. The tag was scanned at JFK, but it looks like it was never loaded onto the aircraft. It's missing, ma'am. We've opened a file for it. It will probably turn up in the next 24 to 48 hours. Lena simply nodded. She took the file number and the claim paperwork. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She had all the evidence she needed. She took a photo of the claim form and emailed it to Nathan with a single word: irredeemable. She took a black car to the Savoy, where a courier was already waiting in the lobby with the new encrypted drive from Nathan. Her backup plan was in motion. She checked into her suite, took a long, hot shower, and put on a fresh power suit, a striking emerald green that projected confidence and authority. She spent the next hour reviewing the duplicate presentation, her focus absolute. The anger was now a tool, honed and sharpened, ready to be deployed. At precisely 2:00 p.m., she walked into the Meridian Airways corporate office in central London. The atmosphere was funereal. The receptionist looked up at her, her eyes widening in dawning horror. She clearly recognized Lena from the video. Dr. Holloway, the receptionist, stammered. We weren't sure if you were still coming." "I'm never late for a meeting," Lena said coolly. She was escorted into a large glass-walled boardroom. Seated around the table were 3 Meridian VPs of European marketing and operations. They looked like men on their way to their own executions. On a large screen at the head of the table, a video conference window was open, showing a haggard-looking Robert Morrison in his Chicago office. The senior VP, a man named Jonathan Finch, stood up, his hands trembling slightly. "Dr. Holloway, on behalf of all of us at Meridian Airways, I want to offer our deepest, most sincere apologies for the unacceptable incident at JFK this morning. It was a breakdown in our standards, and I assure you—" Lena held up a single elegant hand, and he immediately fell silent. "Mr. Finch," she said, her voice calm and filling the silent room. "Let's not begin with empty platitudes. You have a presentation to give me regarding the rollout of our joint marketing campaign. I've come a long way. Please begin." Stunned, the VPs exchanged panicked glances. Robert Morrison on the screen looked equally bewildered. This was not the screaming, demanding adversary they had prepared for. This was something far more unnerving, a commander taking control of the battlefield. For the next 20 minutes, Jonathan and his team stumbled through their presentation. They showed mock-ups of airport lounges decked out in Aura branding concepts for in-flight magazine spreads and digital banners. It was all excellent work, a vision of a seamless, prestigious partnership. With every slide, the irony in the room grew thicker, more suffocating. When they finished, an awkward silence descended. All eyes were on Lena. She sat motionless for a moment, then leaned forward slightly. "Thank you. It's a compelling vision of what our partnership could be. A partnership based on mutual respect, professionalism, and a shared commitment to excellence." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. Now she said, her voice dropping to an icy, precise tone, "I'd like to show you a short video. It's a piece of user-generated content that demonstrates the current reality of our partnership." She produced a small adapter from her briefcase, connected her phone to the massive screen, and with a few taps, the viral video of her humiliation at Gate B24 filled the wall. Gary Price's condescending chuckle echoed through the boardroom's high-tech sound system. The VPs flinched as if they'd been struck. Robert Morrison squeezed his eyes shut. When the video ended, Lena disconnected her phone. The screen went black. That she said softly, but with the force of a thunderclap, is the true state of our partnership today. Your company didn't just mishandle my luggage. Your employees, representing your corporate culture, accused me of fraud. They ridiculed me. They treated me with a level of disrespect I have not encountered in my professional life. And then, to complete the trifecta of incompetence, you lost my bag. The bag with my prototypes. She looked directly at the camera at the face of Robert Morrison. So, Mr. Morrison, let's dispense with the marketing presentation. The only discussion we need to have right now is about whether the Aura Meridian partnership has a future, and if it does, what that future is going to cost you. The boardroom was a vacuum of sound. The 3 VPs in London looked as if they might spontaneously combust from sheer terror. On the screen, Robert Morrison, the titan of the airline industry, looked diminished, a man trapped in a box of his own company's making. He finally found his voice, a strained, desperate rasp. Dr. Holloway. Lena, I am mortified. There are no words to express how sorry I am. The employees involved, Brenda Jenkins and Gary Price, have been suspended pending immediate termination. It was a disgusting, isolated incident, and it does not represent the values of Meridian Airways. Lena let his words hang in the air before dissecting them with surgical precision. Isolated, Mr. Morrison. I don't believe that for a second. What I experienced was not a breakdown in standards. It was a demonstration of your standards. Your employees felt empowered to act that way. They felt secure in their judgment, confident that their supervisor and their company would back their prejudiced assumptions. And you know what? They were right. Mr. Price backed Ms. Jenkins without a moment's hesitation. Your system worked exactly as it was designed to. She stood up and began to pace slowly in front of the large windows overlooking the London streets. This isn't about 2 bad employees. This is about a rotten corporate culture, a culture that allowed them to look at a black woman regardless of her business class ticket or the quality of her belongings and see someone lesser, someone untrustworthy. A culture that finds the idea of me being a CEO laughable. She stopped and turned back to face the camera. So terminating 2 employees is not a solution. It's a public relations maneuver. It's a sacrificial offering you hope will appease me. But I am not interested in sacrifices. I am interested in systemic change. The blood drained from Morrison's face. He knew this was going far beyond a simple settlement. What do you have in mind? He asked the question, heavy with the unspoken fear of the answer. Lena walked back to the table and laid her hands flat upon its polished surface. She was no longer just a CEO. She was a judge about to deliver a verdict. Here is what is going to happen. She stated, her voice devoid of any emotion, but absolute resolve. The $50 million sponsorship contract is hereby frozen effective immediately. All joint marketing activities will cease. We will be releasing a public statement to that effect within the hour, citing a fundamental breach of partnership values. The VPs in the room gasped. Morrison looked like he had been punched. This is the starting point of our negotiation. Lena continued, ignoring their reactions. You have an opportunity, and it is a very slim one, to win this partnership back. But it will be on my terms and my terms only. She began to list her conditions, each one a hammer blow to Meridian's C-suite. 1, you will issue a public, unreserved apology. Not the corporate nonsense your PR team posted, but a real one. It will name me. It will name your employees. It will detail exactly what happened and admit that my treatment was a result of implicit bias that is evidently rampant within your organization. That apology will be signed by you, Mr. Morrison, and published as a full-page ad in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Financial Times. 2. The termination of Miss Jenkins and Mr. Price is a given. But you will go further. You will conduct a full independent third-party audit of your customer service protocols, hiring practices, and internal training programs, specifically focusing on racial and gender bias. The firm conducting this audit will be chosen by me from a list I provide, and the results will be made public. 3. Based on that audit, you will implement a new mandatory and continuous training program for every single employee, from baggage handlers to the board of directors. This program will also be designed by a firm of my choosing. She paused, letting the weight of those demands sink in, before delivering the final, most impactful condition. 4. Meridian Airways will establish a $10 million grant fund administered by a neutral foundation. This fund, which we will call the Aura Ascension Grant, will be dedicated to supporting startups and entrepreneurs from minority backgrounds within the travel and technology sectors. It will be your penance, and it will be a tangible investment in ensuring the kind of people you dismissed yesterday are the leaders you answer to tomorrow. The silence that followed was profound. She had not asked for money for herself. She had not asked for frequent flyer miles. She had demanded a complete and total institutional reckoning. She had asked for them to pay, not her, but society for their failings. You have 72 hours to agree to these terms in principle via a legally binding letter of intent, Lena concluded. If you agree, we will unfreeze the contract upon the successful and verified implementation of every single point. If you refuse, or if you try to negotiate a single item, Aura Luggage will terminate the contract permanently. We will walk away from the $50 million. My legal team will proceed with a lawsuit for brand damage and defamation that will make your stock price's current tumble look like a pleasant afternoon stroll. My missing bag, with its proprietary prototypes alone, is a multi-million-dollar liability for you. The choice is yours, Mr. Morrison. Without another word, she gathered her things, gave a curt nod to the stunned executives, and walked out of the boardroom. She did not look back. She didn't need to. The power had shifted completely. She had turned her public humiliation into a platform for sweeping, meaningful change. They had refused her carry-on, not knowing she owned the brand. Now they knew she owned them, too. The karma wasn't just hitting back, it was reshaping their entire world. The moment the heavy boardroom door clicked shut behind Dr. Holloway, the fragile composure of the Meridian executives shattered. Jonathan Finch, the senior VP, slumped into his chair as if his strings had been cut. On the screen, Robert Morrison looked like a man who had aged a decade in the span of an hour. For a full minute, the only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Well, Morrison finally rasped his voice, a hollow echo in the cavernous room. She wasn't bluffing. Bob, a $10 million grant fund. A public audit by her chosen firm. One of the other VPs exclaimed, his voice trembling. The board will never approve it. The cost, the humiliation. Morrison cut him off with a sharp, brutal laugh that held no humor. The cost. The cost of not doing this will be the entire company. Don't you understand what just happened? She played this perfectly. She's not asking for a payout. She's demanding our soul. If we fight this, we are the villains in a story that is now front-page news across the globe. We are the racist, incompetent airline that laughed at its most important partner. She's given us one path out, and it's through total unconditional surrender. He leaned into his camera, his eyes burning with a desperate intensity. Get legal on the phone. Draft the letter of intent, word for word exactly as she laid it out. I want it on her desk, or rather her lawyer's desk, by morning. Don't change a single comma. Our only move here is complete and utter compliance." The news of Meridian's capitulation broke the next day, not as a leak but as a deliberate press release from Aura Luggage. It stated that Meridian Airways had agreed in principle to a series of transformative actions to address deep-seated institutional failures. When the full-page apologies appeared in the world's most respected financial papers, they were unlike any corporate statement ever seen. It was a raw, humiliating, and deeply specific admission of fault. It praised Dr. Holloway's integrity and courage, and it positioned Meridian not as a victim of a PR crisis, but as a company in dire need of redemption. The public reaction was a tidal wave of support for Lena. She became an overnight icon, lauded not just for her business acumen, but for her masterful handling of the crisis. "Thank you, Dr. Holloway" became a trending topic. Business schools began writing case studies. Other corporations watched in terrified awe, and internal memos began flying through HR departments across the country, urgently demanding reviews of their own customer service and bias training. A single incident at Gate B24 had triggered a corporate soul-searching that rippled through the entire service industry. For Brenda Jenkins and Gary Price, the karma was swift and unforgiving. Their terminations were the least of it. Blacklisted by every major airline, they found themselves unemployable in the industry they'd built their careers in. Their digital footprint was permanently stained. A simple Google search of their names brought up countless articles and think pieces about the Haridwar's Meridian meltdown. Brenda lost her home within 6 months. Gary, who had seen himself as a corporate gatekeeper, was reduced to a cautionary tale his former colleagues told to new recruits. They were not just fired, they were footnotes in a story of a power they had failed to recognize. True to her word, Lena Holloway oversaw every step of Meridian's mandated transformation. The audit firm she selected was known for its ruthless, uncompromising approach. For 6 months, they dissected Meridian's inner workings, interviewing hundreds of employees and reviewing thousands of pages of documents. The final report was a scathing indictment of a culture of complacency and implicit bias. The new training program, dubbed the Holloway Initiative, was immersive and challenging. Employees were put through rigorous simulations, forced to confront uncomfortable truths about their own biases. Robert Morrison himself was in the first session, sitting in a generic training room, stripped of his CEO title and made to listen. Meanwhile, the Aura Ascension Grant began its work. The first recipient was a young black woman from Atlanta, who had developed a revolutionary app for solo female travelers. As Lena presented her with the first check at a press conference, the symbolism was lost on no one. She was using the penalty for her humiliation to build the ladder for the next generation. 2 weeks after the incident, a small, battered-looking crate was delivered to Lena's office in New York. Inside was her Odyssey carry-on. One of the magnetic wheels was slightly damaged, and there was a long, ugly scratch across the graphite shell. Inside, her prototypes were safe. She ran her fingers over the scar on the bag's surface. It wasn't perfect anymore. Neither was the partnership with Meridian. But like the bag, it had survived. It was stronger tested, and its value had been proven in the fire. A year later, Lena sat in the newly redesigned flagship lounge at JFK, a project born from the renewed partnership. It was sleek, modern, and featured a prominent display honoring the Aura Ascension Grant recipients. Robert Morrison sat opposite her, a quieter, more humbled man. Their stock had recovered, and their customer satisfaction scores were for the first time in a decade leading the industry. "You're back," he said, gesturing to a brand-new, flawless Odyssey by her feet. "We would be honored to replace it for you, of course." Lena smiled a genuine, warm smile. "Thank you, Robert, but no. I'm keeping the old one. It has a scratch. I like to think of it as a reminder." a reminder, she thought to herself, that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in being invincible, but in having the resilience to endure the damage and the wisdom to turn the scars into a blueprint for a better future. They had refused her bag, and in doing so, had given her the opportunity to change their world. It was a price they were all in the end better for having paid. The fallout was swift and decisive. Within 48 hours, Robert Morrison, under immense pressure from his board of directors, who saw the stock plummeting over 20%, signed the letter of intent. The full-page apology was printed, a stunning admission of corporate failure that sent shockwaves through the industry. Brenda Jenkins and Gary Price were fired and became pariahs in the airline world, their names forever linked to the infamous Armjash Meridian meltdown. But Lena Holloway's actions echoed far beyond their individual fates. The Aura Ascension Grant became a beacon of hope, funding dozens of innovative new companies. The mandatory bias training, designed by a leading sociological research firm, became a new industry standard, eventually adopted by other airlines seeking to avoid a similar corporate catastrophe. Meridian Airways spent the next 2 years rebuilding its reputation under the watchful eye of Dr. Holloway's chosen auditors. The partnership with Ayura was eventually restored, but it was a partnership reborn, built not on a financial transaction, but on a hard-won lesson in respect and accountability. Dr. Holloway's story became a legend, a case study taught in business schools about the power of standing your ground, the importance of brand integrity, and the simple, profound truth that you should never ever judge a passenger by their appearance. Her quiet dignity in the face of blatant disrespect had brought a corporate giant to its knees and lifted up countless others in the process. If this story of karmic justice and principled leadership resonated with you, please take a moment to hit that like button to help us share it with more people. Consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications so you won't miss our next story. And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed a moment where someone was completely underestimated? Share your story. Thank you for listening, and remember, true power isn't about being the loudest voice in the room, but about having the conviction to make your quiet voice heard.